Matthew Blair. I'm a member of the Tampa Bay Chamber's Policy Council, and I want to thank and welcome the viewers tuning in to our 2020 Virtual Candidate Forum Series. The Tampa Bay Chamber focuses on policy, not politics, and while we don't endorse, we want to make sure our members and the business community are well informed on where candidates are on issues that are important to business. Today, we're excited to have candidates for Hillsborough County Clerk of Circuit Court with us, and I'd like to welcome on behalf of the Tampa Bay Chamber Policy Council, Kevin Beckner and Cindy Stuart. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, Matt. Great to be with you.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. We are just 6 weeks away from Election Day. Can you each give us a brief update on your campaign and what message you're wanting to deliver to voters in the final 6-week stretch here? And if we can, we'll start with Cindy Stuart.
Thanks, Matt. So 6 weeks. Wow. I mean, it's hard to believe. I think it's interesting that I think voters are going to be a little bit surprised to see in their vote by mail or when they actually go to the polls on the 18th that this is the only opportunity that they get to vote for this seat. This is a universal primary. It's not usually the way that things happen for a constitutional officer for them to be voted in a short amount of time. They're probably going to be a little surprised when they see that on their ballot. So that's something I think that we have to overcome. As we have to reach every single voter in Hillsborough County and not just particular partisan people. So that's a challenge, and this is a very large county, so just really reaching the Democrats, which my opponent and I are both Democrats, but reaching all of the Republicans and all the independents as well is challenging. And with the situation that we're in, where we're having to also reach people in unique and strange ways via social media, these type of forums. We're still doing, I think, traditional signs, but walking neighborhoods and doing events and trying to raise money in the traditional ways are not something that is standard at the moment. I think that every single campaign, every single elected, every single candidate out there is learning a whole new set of rules around how we're going to actually reach voters and what the message is. I think for me, the message is that you may need to make a decision. I know that there are a lot of people out here who say, well, I'll only vote one party or another. You only get one choice here. And unfortunately, we're both Democrats. We're very different Democrats, I think, but we're both Democrats. So we're both going to be on the ballot, and we both you have to make some sort of choice. So reaching the people who only vote party line is, like I said, is going to be a challenge, and showing differences between our history and our ethics and our work-related issues and how we manage things is going to be the challenge for the people that we need on the other side of the aisle to also make a decision. They're going to have to pick one or the other. There is no Republican in this race, and so reaching those voters and making them understand what it is that we need and plan to do for this office as we move forward is really the challenge.
Thank you. Kevin Beckner.
Thank you, Matt. And Matt, I think one of the most important things that voters need to realize is first understand what the clerk of the circuit court is. First and foremost, the clerk serves as the chief financial officer for the county. And so they're responsible for roughly about managing $1.8 billion plus in the cash flow. They're also responsible for the auditing of records. They're also responsible, as the clerk of the courts, they're responsible for all the court records, as well as keeping all the minutes and all the public records related to public meetings. So there's an awful lot of responsibility that goes in to being clerk. And that's why it's extraordinarily important that they elect somebody into the office that has the background and experience to be able to do that work. For over 18 years, I've been a certified financial planner. I've served 8 years in the public sector as county commissioner from 2008 to 2016 with an experience of balancing a $4 billion budget. And so all of those unique things qualify me to do the job as the CFO and the clerk, along with the record that I have, the work that I've done around the justice system, as well as the improvements that I've helped make along the way to make government more efficient. And so those are the things that I will be talking about through in this forum and also around the campaign trail. And most importantly, while I'm qualified for the office, it's most importantly that my vision is the one that has caused me to want to run for public office and to continue to serve our community. And so that vision is based on the philosophy of my public and private sector experience that I bring. And it's my general business philosophy that the two most important assets to an organization are its customers and its employees. If you take care of your customers and your employees, 95% of everything else takes care of itself. And so throughout this forum, and at least by the closing of this forum, I will go into detail what my vision is and what voters can expect as their next clerk of the circuit court.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for an answer to that first question. And we're going to alternate back and forth. And so the next question coming is, what do you see as the core function of the office? And so Kevin Beckner, we'll come back to you to answer that question. What do you see as the core function of the clerk's office?
Well, Matt, as I mentioned, the most important thing is that the role that they play is the chief financial officer for the county. And so again, they're responsible for the management of all the cash flow that comes in. The second part of that function is that they serve as the clerk of the records. And there's actually a total of 1,000 different functions that they perform that are mandated by state law and ordinances. I mean, everything from performing marriage ceremonies, they record deeds. I can imagine that just about every single person throughout their lifetime at some point in time will have an interaction with the clerk's office. So there's a lot of different responsibilities that go with it, but primarily as the CFO and the clerk of the records, those are the two core responsibilities.
Thank you. And Cindy Stuart, what do you see as the core function of the office?
So I would reiterate what my opponent said, but what I would add to that is one of the core functions of this office is being the capability to have good, solid, close relationships with all of the entities that interact with this office. So that, that includes, the public defender's office who endorses my campaign. That includes the judges, that includes the state's attorneys, that includes, the sheriff and the tax collector. I think there's a lot of room for this office to continue that work and even build on that work and have a closer relationship with the tax collector's office. The other part of that messaging would be, how does this office interact with the customer, and how does this office manage, especially in the environment that we're living in today, and an opportunity for customers, the regular citizen who has to interact with this office. How do we manage the easiest and most effective way to have that person get what they need from this office without being exposed to potentially other people or to, pandemic situations. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in that area, a lot of lift that could be done on the technology side for this office to really, really boom in an environment that they're already working in. This is one of the few offices actually that did not shut down during the pandemic. Many offices had to close. They weren't capable of actually ramping up and doing virtual work. The clerk's office never shut down. I know the tax collector's office shut down. The courts have had to shut down, and they're still struggling with how to manage some of the work that they've done. Now, I know the tax collector's office is reopened, but again, the clerk's office never shut down. So continuing to manage how the staff interacts with the lay employee or the lay customer so that they can get what they need. I think there is a very unique opportunity for us to build on some of the stuff that Pat Frank has already done, but to expand an opportunity for people to not have to come downtown. I mean, let's face it, coming downtown in the middle of the week or at the beginning of the week for any service that you have to park your car and then find your way through whatever office you're trying to get to see a clerk and get what you need is extremely cumbersome. It's confusing. And if we can make that whole experience easier for a customer and incentivize them in some way to work in a different manner and actually use technology to do that, I would certainly forge forward on that. I also think it's really important to understand that the relationships that we forge with and maintain with those other offices is very, very important. The relationship that you have with and continue to have with the county and the administrators at the county and all of the county commission because of the title of the clerk's office being the CFO and managing all of that funding. Again, I have worked and been an elected official for 8 years, managed a $3.2 billion budget for the last 8 years. We've come through some really rough times and actually have come out on the other side, not having to really lay off a lot of people, but cutting service, cutting waste, and spending a lot of time working through the issues that came with that budget. I mean, we were actually in a place where the reserves of the district were being raided to pay salaries. And unbeknownst to the board, we ended up having to really work hard to restore what it was that needed to be kept in reserves so that we didn't lose anything out of our New York funding agencies and our New York ratings. So that's been a challenge and something that I would bring forward to the clerk's office.
We appreciate that, and you've touched on a couple of things that we're going to get to in later questions, so thank you. We're coming right back to you, Cindy, with a quick question. If elected, as you know, you'll follow in the footsteps of a longtime public servant in the role who's well regarded in our community for the service in that role. What practices are in place in the clerk's office that you think are important to carry over into your new administration?
Well, so I think that, you know, Pat's done a great job of managing a lot of the things. I mean, there's a lot of diversity in that office. There's no issue in that respect. I think she has done a great job in training individuals. It's not you don't become a clerk and work in that office and get left to your own devices in day 1 or 2 or even week 1. It's my understanding that's a year-long training process, and they spend a lot of time articulating the details to a new person coming into the office to make sure that there are no issues. I mean, we're dealing with very sensitive documents that are extremely important that the details are right. It's something that I count as a strength of mine, the attention to detail and digging deep to make sure we have information right. And I think that's something that needs to be maintained, but I also think there's room for us to, again, move differently on the technology side and allow for people to have the opportunity to do things online. You know, I think we're seeing, we even said it at the beginning, you know, getting in these meetings and being able to efficiently and effectively move from one space to another and get what we need is something that people are starting to understand. I think there was a level of us that used a lot of technology before. And I mean, even I will say as a technology person and with an MIS degree, I have learned so many things about the things we can do and the things that can be offered for this role. You know, I think there's an opportunity for us to look at and not so much offer, but summon jurors differently through the court system. I mean, there should be and can be ways for us to not pick juries, but how we bring people into the court system and what that looks like, and more or less check in, have them do a check-in before they, again, come down, park your car, try to find parking and sit there all day. There are ways for us through technology to ease that. I mean, I think it's a reality that for us to expect that you're going to bring 500 jurors in on a Monday afternoon and have them sit there all day, that is not reality anymore. And so we're going to have to work closely with the court system and the chief judge on what that looks like. You know, is there a way for us to establish a staggered approach to that? Is there a way for us to, you know, have people check in online? I mean, you can ask me 4 questions really about serving on a jury and find out almost immediately that Cindy Stuart is not going to qualify for the jury you're looking for. So what does that look like as we move forward? And I think there's a lot of opportunity again for us to make some pretty swift changes and adapt to the environment that we're now living in.
We appreciate that. We're going to come to technology in just a minute, and we're excited to hear from both of you on that. And so, Kevin, that same question, you'll follow in the footsteps of a longtime public servant. What practices are in place today at the clerk's office you think are important to carry over into your new administration, if those exist?
Sure, Matt. And I think when you look at the legacy that Pat Frank has left, it's quite amazing. Her legacy, I think, will be defined as taking a paper-based system and transforming that into a more electronic-based system, which has created extraordinary efficiencies across the board. And so part of my vision is to actually build on that platform that she has made. And so one of the things that we will explore is the continued expansion of secure access to online records using cloud-based technology. There are a lot of other circuits out there that are using that similar technology, and I think that we have a lot to learn from other circuits. Also around the jury selection. The jury selection is an important function that the clerk plays. And there are systems that are in place that we have examined, for instance, in Orlando, that can make the system a lot more efficient. And some of it has to do with how we measure what they call the jury yield. And so that's the true efficiency on how many summonses you send out versus the responses that you get. So you can use technology to increase the responses, but more importantly, there are obstacles that many people face in reporting for jury duty. And one of the larger obstacles has to do with transportation. So if you look at what the Orlando has done, they have partnered with the their public transportation agency to offer vouchers. And so that's one of the things that we would look at to help increase the jury participation. Why is that so important? It's because when you can increase the jury participation and get a more diversified jury, you therefore increase the chances that you are going to have a more diverse jury for selections by the attorneys. And so that's really important to a fair trial to make sure that we have diversified juries that are in place. And so through technology, as well as implementing best practices from other circuits, those are types of the things that we can build upon the legacy that Pat has built. But one of my core things that I'm going to focus on, while Pat is known for expanding the from electronic to paperless, my legacy is going to be defined by making sure that everybody has equal access to the justice system. And first and foremost, I'm going to expand and focus on doing outreach and providing more services to minority and underserved neighborhoods. We have plans to partner with the legal community to establish a self-help center that will provide access to professional legal services at an affordable cost. Again, this is a model that they have done in Pinellas that's worked extraordinarily well. But really the core of my legacy is going to be focused on simplifying how individuals file and utilize our justice system. And the focus is really helping individuals that are known as pro se clients. Those are people that can't afford an attorney or for whatever reason choose to represent themselves. What we are going to focus on is utilizing a system a lot like TurboTax. As easy it is for individuals to file TurboTax, their personal income taxes with TurboTax, we're going to make it that simple to file documents into our justice system. So overall, again, Pat's done an extraordinary job. We're going to build upon her legacy that she has left with the focus on making sure that everybody has equal access to the justice system.
Thank you, Kevin. And so you're going to be next in answering this next question. You were leading there, it sounded like already. Why should the people of Hillsborough County elect you as their new clerk of court?
Well, Matt, first and foremost, as I mentioned at the beginning, the clerk is one of the most important offices in our county. They serve as a CFO, and they're also the main records keeper, as well as we talked about how they influence the jury selection process. I have a background, again, as 18 years as a certified financial planner. I've served on the Board of County Commissioners for 8 years, and I was known as a fiscal hawk on the county commission. And so I'm going to bring that same fiscal conservatism into the clerk's office to make sure that taxpayers' dollars are well invested and that they're well managed. And with my background and my policies that I've worked on as county commissioner around the justice system, I believe that that makes me the most qualified individual for this position.
And Cindy, we'll come to you. Why should the people of Hillsborough County elect you as their new clerk of court?
So first, before I answer that question, I just want to I want to clarify something that my opponent said, and that is when we talk about jury summons and jury pools. I just want to make it very clear that while we should look for ways to make jury pools something that a person who is summoned finds it easier to participate, and we clarify how we spend our energy in bringing people in. It is not in any way, shape, or form the clerk's role to make sure that we have a diverse jury pool. That is the role of the court system, the judges, and the attorneys. So I just want to make sure that we're clear. The clerk's role is to get jurors into that system, and for the court, the attorneys and the judges to pick the jury. I don't want in any way, shape, or form people to think that the clerk's office has any role in making sure that it is a diverse jury pool. This is a random selection of people by driver's license. It is not something that the clerk's office should even be discussing how they make the jury pool more diverse. Making it easy access, having equitable access, I am all for, and anything we can piggyback off any county or any other jurisdiction that is using, I am clear about doing, but it is not our role to make sure or think about how we make a pool more diverse. So why should the voters vote for me? So I've spent 8 years in public service. I have spent a long time learning the ins and outs of the Hillsborough County Public Schools and managing a $3 billion budget. We have weathered, I have personally weathered 3 superintendents in that time, one that we just hired and one that we terminated. A lot of public pushback there, a lot of adversity around the whys and the hows we did that. We're still weathering very difficult decisions right now as we speak. I'm going into a meeting today where we will discuss whether or not to mandate mandatory masks on students and teachers or not. So I feel like I can take the relationships that I have built with all of the entities that we talked about across the board that I have and continue to work with on many occasions and into this office and build upon that. I will remind people that there was a board that my opponent sat on that was closed down, basically shut down, eliminated because of a lack of ability to lead and a lack of ability to actually form those relationships and have good government in that office. So I'm not sitting in that position. I'm not in a place where I'm in a role where we were shut down, and my opponent is. I feel like I have spent a lot of time in the last 8 years working for the community, working for the children in this community, and working for parents in this community. And I hope that they see and they can trust that I'm honest and that I have integrity and that I work with very transparent and I get things done almost as quickly as possible, let's put it that way. I don't like to spend a lot of time muddling through policy or bureaucracy or politics. I'm pretty no nonsense, and I come to the table ready and prepared to learn this job. I don't have all the answers. There's going to be massive financial strain on this office, and we're going to have to look at how we continue to move this office forward. This office has lost a lot of funding because of the shutdown. A lot of things that are going to have to, I think we're going to have to turn to the legislature for help, and we're certainly going to have to turn to the county for help. But I think that I am the most qualified person to immediately step in, follow Pat's legacy with her endorsement and with her staff's help, and continue to move the office forward.
All right, Cindy, thank you. So that brings us to this question on technology, and just to let everybody know where we are, we have about 6 questions to get through, so we want to be thoughtful of time and response. Here's our next question. It's coming to you, Cindy, in order there. What reforms
Actually, hey, Matt,
I'm sorry?
Before you go on, I'm sorry, Ms. Stuart had invoked me on a couple of different times, and I think that there's a couple of points that need to be addressed before we move on to the next section. First and foremost, around the jury selection process, it's quite evident that maybe she doesn't fully understand that the process, when you have more people that show up for your jury pool, that you obviously have the ability to impact the diversity that results of more people appearing. While the clerk's office does not select a jury, it is part of our job to make sure that we create a diversified jury pool. So she needs to understand that, and just to clarify that.
And I understand the job perfectly, Mr. Beckner, but that is not true.
I don't want to step in here, but I'm going to step in. Okay. We appreciate both of you joining, and there are clear differences between the two candidates, and we're excited that those are being highlighted. I wanted to try to stick as close to the questions that we've got. And I know Commissioner Beckner, you shared your perspective, and she did invoke her perspective. If it's okay, like to plow on to the technology question, and if you can weave a response in there, that's okay. But we did want to go ahead and plow forward to try to keep this as close to the script in questions as possible for both of you, if that's acceptable.
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you. So Cindy, what reforms would you institute? And I would just ask at this point, personal pleasure here, if we could stick as close to answering the questions we've got in a brief manner, that probably keeps everybody focused on the questions that are in front. Again, we appreciate both of you joining us today. What reforms would you institute to enhance the technology of the office? And given the budget constraints, where will you find the money to upgrade the working of the office, making it more efficient and transparent? We're coming to Cindy, you on that, and then Kevin, to you as well.
And again, I think I touched on this earlier in my comments. There's a great opportunity for us to look at how we make this office more efficient. And that's not to say that that's going to cost more money. There's an opportunity to actually make the office more efficient around technology with the use of technology and actually save money. An initial startup of things and people getting ramped up. I think a lot of that's happened, especially with the employees. They're already working from home, making sure that records are secure and there's, transfer of information back and forth that is secure and safe, and that people are getting what they need. I think a lot of that has already happened. I think that the technology piece that would need to happen would be on the customer side and how the customer sees and views and actually gets the information. And I'm not talking just about the customer who's looking to pay a parking ticket or the customer who's looking to obtain a birth certificate. I'm talking about in this state, you have to search as an attorney 67 different counties to look for a client you may be representing to find out if there's anything else out there. In the federal system, there's one system you search to find any documentation or information on a client you're about to serve. So there's opportunity there to make improvements. That would be a statewide initiative that other clerks, but it certainly would benefit a very large county like ours, where there are a number of attorneys that are working through that system and trying to maintain and understand what client they have sitting in front of them and what other background or baggage they have that may be attached to them in those systems. And if you miss one or two of those counties, you can miss a whole lot of information about a particular person. So that's an initiative that I think we could move forward on. That would be a statewide initiative. But again, around technology, there are a lot of ways for us to engage the everyday client, even if we were doing almost like telemedicine and allowing the client to sign on and see a clerk in the front of their face and have them walk them through step by step some of the processes that they need to get through. I think the court system has done a great job of using technology and to see cases. I think that could be continued with attorneys and the clerk's office using technology to continue, if they need to, meetings and having interaction with the clerk's office and how they see or need information. But I think there's a way to make the process as stress-free as possible and to make it as erroneous as possible for the everyday customer. Again, I touched on it earlier, but there are many opportunities for us to improve on efficiency. There will always be opportunities for us to improve on efficiency, regardless of what is currently happening or what has happened. And again, I think Pat has done a great job of going from paperless to technology, but there's always room for technology to be improved and be more efficient. And there's always room for us to educate the lay person who may not have that opportunity. One of the things that I see happening right now is we have kiosks out there right now that in remote areas that people can go to, but you pay a fee to use that kiosk, where really we should be incentivizing people to go to those kiosks and not have to come all the way into the office and make those requests that they need. So if there's a way for us to turn that around, instead of charging them a fee, which really does nothing but create, it's an incentive for us to not have them come all the way downtown and burden the system in the downtown area. So there's a lot of things that could be done both on the state and on the local level to improve the records that are kept, how people access them on both sides, whether that's on another government agency side. And there's ways for us to interact differently with all of the customers who interact with this office.
Thank you, Cindy. Kevin, to you. What reforms will you institute to enhance the technology of the office? And then given the budget constraints, where will you find the money to upgrade the working of the office, making it more efficient and transparent?
Sure, and I think, again, going to some of the points that I made before, there's certainly, for the current system, there are tweaks that we can do to expand secure access to records and more online services. But Matt, really, all of this, when it comes down to money, it's about partnerships. When I talked about the desire to expand and make sure that everybody has equal access to the justice system, for instance, we talked about doing more outreach to minority and underserved neighborhoods. There's opportunities to partner with other government entities, whether it's the libraries, tax collector office, other government entities in different locations, to make sure that we can leverage technology and our talent from each agency to provide greater number of services in each of those facilities. It's going to be really interesting, as we're dealing with the COVID-19 and we're looking at real estate issues. My guesstimation is that probably in the future, the county is probably going to have less real estate and perhaps even more space perhaps available, but they'll be looking at different ways to consolidate and partner with other agencies as well, as more and more people look at continuity of operations and having people work remotely or from at home as part of their jobs. There's two great partners that we have that we need to make sure that when we're looking at things that do cost money, first and foremost, the Board of County Commissioners. One of their charges that they have is to help provide technology funding for the court system. So as a former county commissioner, I'm well versed with the culture and the way that the board operates, as well as I have a great working relationship with the new county administrator, Bonnie Wise, and the current board members. And so it's being able to show the value that we can provide to taxpayers that could potentially save money, as well as provide new innovative services to the people that we serve. And so it's those partnerships that are going to be extraordinarily important. One of the top things, though, that we're going to be facing as the clerk's office, you mentioned, Matt, is going to be the budget. A larger percentage of our budget comes from traffic tickets. And so there is an estimation that our budget could be dramatically impacted because of the current funding formula that is in place at the state. And so therefore, the partnership that we have with the legislators are extraordinarily important. And I've already spoken with Senator Roussan, who's endorsed my campaign. And also Senator Brandis is very, very well versed on the issues related to the clerk's office and the current funding formula. We have got to revise that and work with the legislatures to make sure that moving forward that the clerks, not only in Hillsborough, but all across the state, have a clear and stable funding mechanism. Funding our operations on the back of individuals, for traffic tickets and that create those types of offenses, I think, is just wrong. And we need to make sure that we look at other funding sources to help fund our operations. But I'm well versed in getting things done in Tallahassee. I worked when I put forward an initiative that helped Sun City Center get the golf cart path. We needed to go to the legislature to help with that issue. And I worked with then Representative Weatherford to make sure that we could get a deal done with the Department of Transportation to allow that to happen. So I'm well versed in working with Tallahassee. I've got partnerships, and I'm well versed in the county commission and the county culture. So it's through those partnerships that we can, again, get more done and accomplished together. And that's what we're going to have to do to get through this current crisis, as well as looking at future opportunities.
Thank you, Kevin, for that. And we're coming back to you with this next question. Of all the issues confronting the clerk of the court's office, which single issue would you say is most important to you and why? And what would you do about it if you're elected?
Well, the number one priority that I have coming into it, other than serving the customers and make sure we have continuity of operations, which is first and foremost the most important thing. Anytime you have leadership change, there's obviously concern inside the organization, about the prospects of having a job, et cetera. So making sure that we stabilize the organization and that people realize that our employees are the heartbeat of our organization. They're the ones that make things happen. And so it's my expectation that there could be a lot of people that will leave the office once Pat retires. But there's also a lot of long tenured clerks in the office that are going through the Florida retirement system. So my largest concern is the brain drain potential inside that organization. So it's extraordinarily important that the high valued employees, the people that have been there, we need their help to make sure that we can get through this transition period. Pat has hired a lot of great people over the years, and I know a lot of great people inside the clerk's office. And like I said, they're the ones that have created all the customer service initiatives and everything inside the organization that supports the policies and the decisions that have been made by the clerk. And so I would say human resources going in is the number one, and then followed, of course, how we're going to manage the budget and work within the budgetary constraints that we might have would be right behind that.
Great, thank you. And Cindy, same question. Of all the issues of confronting I'm going to start that again. Of all the issues confronting the clerk's office, which single issue is most important to you and why? And what would you do about it if you're elected?
So I would say that in counter to what my opponent said, stabilizing the office is not an issue. I think the office is very stable. I think that Pat has done a really good job, even right now, seeing that there's been a downward turn in money revenues coming into the office. She hasn't yet had to do any furloughs or any layoffs. So she's finding ways right now already to stabilize the office. So the office is stable. I disagree with that statement. I think the budget is going to be the biggest issue, and that's not just going to be any clerk's office. That's going to be a national issue for every governmental agency across this nation. And so I think that potentially we're going to see, or hopefully we're going to see some help from our county administration, but I also see that there could potentially be help coming out of the state and out of the Federal Reserve. I think that it's important to understand that this is not just a Florida issue or a Hillsborough County issue. This is a national issue, and we're all going to see budget cuts. As an elected official dealing with a $3 billion budget, we are already gearing up for a percentage of our employees to not return because of COVID. We're gearing up for the fact that we are going to have to cut budgets. We know that even though the legislature has passed certain items through to the district and passed certain legislation, they're going to be difficult for us to fund. And we're not sure how much this is actually, first of all, no one knows how long this is going to last. So how long you continue to drain what was your reserve pool and what was your income pool, we don't know. So accounting for that and how we manage that going forward is in a black hole. I mean, so it's really difficult to navigate, not knowing that, okay, say we know on December 1, this is all going to end. We don't know that. So what that looks like going forward, I'm not sure. So my biggest issue to approach would be the budget and how we continue to maintain employees, how we continue to maintain service, how do we continue to maintain relationships with the governmental agencies that we have to deal with. I don't think that there's going to be a brain drain on the office. My number one goal moving in there after handling and managing the budget with the team of experts who are already there would be ensuring the employees that I'm not going to make drastic changes. I am going to make sure that they understand how important they are and that they don't need to leave that office, and that I'm not going to be someone who comes in and makes sweeping drastic changes. I don't think that's the way that a leader should behave. I think the leaders should surround themselves with people of expertise who know what's happening in that office and can continue to manage things the way that they have. Like I said, I think the biggest issue is the budget. Not knowing where this ends or how it ends and how we move forward is going to be very interesting for all of us. But I think that there are ways that, like I said, Pat has already started that work because the fiscal year's already started, and how she looks at and manages what's coming from Tallahassee to her and how that gets filtered out. I think she believes she's already asked the county commission for some assistance and what that looks like going forward. I have relationships in Tallahassee as well as an elected official managing one of the 7th largest districts in the nation. I have national relationships that I think we can leverage as well, being that I sit on several national boards. and being able to have those conversations about what is truly happening here in Hillsborough County and what our community needs and what the taxpayers need and what the customers need and what our other government agencies, all of the government agencies are going to suffer from this. All of them are going to suffer from a lack of income. They're all going to suffer from trying to manage how they continue to do the work that they need to do and know they have to do to provide service to the customer and not having the funding to do it. So I think if we all stick together and talk about how we can work better together and work within those relationships, which again, I have a lot of those relationships, that'll make things easier moving forward. But it's not going to be just the clerk's office is managing some budget that has fallen off the cliff. I think every single agency in this county is going to have to look for new ways to work together and new ways to find income and new ways to service the community, which is who we're elected to.
Thank you, Cindy. We're coming right back to you. And here's that next question. Name one issue in Hillsborough County that directly impacts or is directly impacted by race inequality, and explain how your office can incorporate an equity network in addressing this issue.
So I'll speak from the service that I do right now. Race inequality is certainly a topic of conversation in education. It's a topic of conversation, not just in educating in our schools, but in educating the community around what race relations looks like, what equality looks like, what it means to be equitable, what it means to hire equitably, what discrimination policies look like, what training is out there for people who need to be trained and should be trained. I think that the interaction, like I said before, Pat has done an amazing job. Her office is extremely equitable, both on race relations and both on whether or not she's hiring and non-discriminatory practices. So I think she's done a really good job in there. Of course, there's always room for improvement around policy, but I think that it's important that, you know, in the office, we continue to understand what that looks like. And my opponent talked about it a little bit earlier. We have pockets in this community that I don't think people understand the level of inequity that is out there. I think that it is starting to come to light. I think that the shutdown of this community has really brought to light the amount of inequity around food, the inequity around housing, the inequity around job availability, and the inequity around technology and education. And I don't think that that was so prevalent until we shut this community down. For me, I see that in our lowest served and most underprivileged students. You know, I see that, you know, we have technology challenges, and it doesn't matter how many computers you put in front of someone, but if they can't get an internet connection, whether that's because the internet connection is just not available in that area, which we have large pockets of that in South County, or if it's because they don't understand the technology. So there's a lot of education that can be done around equity and racial equity and how we make sure that we're not being discriminatory in the practices and the services that we provide. It's been a huge issue for us at the district in that we have seen very quickly that we have students that we will give a computer to. Mom and dad don't know how to access the internet. They don't know how to access our system. And granted, we're a massive system. So navigating it is very difficult. And I see that for the clerk's office too. Navigating the system is cumbersome. And trying to find one piece of paper that you need out of a very massive system can sometimes be difficult. But I have experience in helping people navigate that and finding ways for that make it easier for people to navigate things like that. We've seen, again, there are no simple answers to some of these things. How you all of a sudden build, you know, a Wi-Fi connection in a section of a county that doesn't have one, so that students can be up and running in a very short amount of time, is difficult. You know, I can give them all of the hotspots that I want, but if they don't know how to sign on to, for example, this platform and get to a teacher to understand what is happening, or their parents don't understand, or they don't have a caregiver or a parent there to help them, becomes challenging. So there's a lot of work to do around educating, you know, or even their phone. You know, people don't understand you can use that as a web-based, or you can access different things on your phone. They think that all they can do is text and dial on it. So there's a lot of education that can be done around some of these things for the community to show them the opportunity that is out there for us to make sure that our practices are equitable and accessible. I mean, it's not just about being equitable, it's about being accessible to everyone, and everyone should have access. There are certain things in life that everyone should have access to, and it shouldn't be something, we don't live in a third world country. It shouldn't be something that people have to struggle for, pay for, or fight for in order to gain access.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And so I'm going to come back with that same question, Kevin, to you. I'm going to restate it, reread it for you. Name one issue in Hillsborough County that directly impacts or is directly impacted by race and equity, and explain how your office can incorporate an equity framework in addressing the issue. Kevin?
Well, sure. And this will probably be a good segue where my opponent tried to mischaracterize that the dissolution of what she was referring to as the Civil Service Board. The Civil Service Board has been in place since 1951. And one of their core jobs was to make sure that there was equity in both the hiring and the firing practices within government. And in fact, in a time when it was instituted in Hillsborough County, was a time that it was a very tumultuous and volatile period in our country and our community about segregation, about race relations, as also about getting employment, especially in the private sector. The Civil Service Board provided the opportunity and a framework and structure to make sure that every single person had an equal opportunity to get a job with inside county government. And they also provided a neutral board to make sure that individuals that were being disciplined or terminated had a fair hearing if they didn't think that their disciplinary action or termination was warranted. That system was successful over the years. And there began a political effort in 2000 to do away with civil service type boards across the state. That hit Hillsborough County in 2014 when many of the constitutionals decided, in using budgetary reasons for the cause, they made a move to dissolve the civil service boards in 2014. And they were partially successful. And so they got the legislature to give them control of the hiring practice back. When my tenure was on the board from 2017 up into 2019, the same constitutional officers decided that they wanted to get control now of the firing practices. And so this whole concept that they wanted to get rid of the Civil Service Board because of budgetary reasons or because of my leadership is totally unwarranted. The main reason why I wanted to get rid of the Civil Service Board is because they wanted to take control of the hiring and firing process. And that's the control that they garnered. And so my point, how that relates to race relations, is that in our taxpayers, businesses, everybody should be concerned about the system now that is in place of the Civil Service Board and how people are being treated equitably and fairly, not only in getting hired, but also in going through the disciplinary process. And I can tell you my tenure on the county, when I was on the Civil Service Board, the number of calls that we have gotten, especially from minorities, about individuals who felt like cronyism had entered back into the system and that they could not get fairly promoted or hired into county government was extraordinary. And so the whole point is, in the clerk's office, while that board is gone, I'm going to make sure that all of our employees are treated equally and fairly, and that there's a just system and process in place for both hiring, promoting, and then we also have a fair hearing board that's in place inside of our office to make sure that everybody has an equal opportunity for employment, promotion, and to make sure that their rights are protected as employees, and having that right to a fair hearing is extraordinarily important. And so I'm going to reinstitute that. And so into our organization, it's important that we have diversity from the top and to the bottom. And so one of the things we're going to take a look at is to make sure that there are processes in place that, again, make sure that it doesn't matter, the color of your skin or any other matter, that we get the most qualified people. And I want our organization to reflect the diversity of our community. That is so extraordinarily important, Matt. It should be important to every organization. And so the third thing that I think is really important, we've already touched upon, is making sure that everybody has equal access to the justice system. And so I'm just going to reemphasize the points of making sure that individuals who can't represent themselves or can't afford to represent themselves, making sure that they have access to our systems, and making sure, again, that our services are prominent in minority and underserved neighborhoods. And most importantly, to make sure that our system is so easy to use that for individuals familiar with filing their income taxes, our system is going to be as easy as TurboTax. So all those things together, Matt, I think are important and will impact our clerk's office directly.
Thank you, Kevin. And we're coming right back to you with this next question. One of the lesser known functions of this role is that you're comptroller. Please tell us what, if any, professional experiences have prepared you for the role of comptroller for the county.
Sure. Comptroller, we've kind of referred to it as a chief financial officer. More people can relate to it, but the official name is comptroller. And so again, I've got I bring both private and public experience into this role. So being a certified financial planner for the last 18 years as well, I'm also currently I have a designation in the human resources from the IPMA. That helps me bring the philosophies of money management, which is extraordinarily important, as well as human resource experience into this job. And so a certified financial planner, my career has been managing money for both personal individuals as well as businesses. My service on the county commission, helping to manage a $4 billion budget, will also serve me well. And it's also noteworthy that I was part of the board during an extraordinary economic downturn where the board had to end up cutting over 25% of our budget, nearly $1 billion, to make sure that we could provide essential services to our taxpayers. And so we made the difficult decisions through that time to make sure that we had continuity of operations and that the impacts to services were minimal. So I bring both of those experiences to be a comptroller, and I think that's what, with those two, with the public and private experience that I have, I think that's what makes me most qualified to be your clerk and CFO, or your comptroller, if you will.
Thank you, Kevin. And Cindy, we're going to come right back to you. And here's that question again. One of the lesser known functions of the role is that of comptroller. Please tell us what, if any, professional experiences have prepared you for the role of comptroller for the county.
So I would say that the comptroller is, you don't have to be a CFO to be a comptroller, and you don't have to be a certified public accountant or a financial planner to be a comptroller. I think that understanding the budget and managing a budget and having the right people around you to help you understand the needs and intrinsic details of what is happening within the office. I sit right now as a treasurer on two very large organizations, one actually that Mr. Beckner helped form. I sit as a state treasurer for the Florida School Boards Association, and I sit currently as a school board member that manages a $3 billion budget. I think that I have certainly spent enough time reviewing our budgetary needs, how our budget works, and our budget is extremely complicated. Any budget of that size is extremely complicated. There are very few corporations out there that manage $3 billion budgets. And so I used to, it's interesting, when we had our issues with our budget and found that our reserves were being rated to cover salaries, everyday salaries of individuals. One of the things I used to tell the superintendent is, look, there's no one you can turn to that can help you or guide you on how to get out of this mess, because there are very few people out there that can manage a $3 billion budget. I mean, it takes a board of 7 and a large CFO's office to manage the budget that we manage. There are many, many contracts that come across my desk that we are required to read and evaluate and look at what it is that the dollars are being spent on, how long the dollars being spent, what the contract looks like, whether or not the contract is valid, whether or not the contract is worth the energy and time put into moving forward on a contract. Have we done our due diligence? So I think that it's important for us to understand that the comptroller is not one person looking at the budget. That's an office. The comptroller has an office that works with a team of skilled individuals who understand, you know, the intrinsic details that come with managing such a large budget. This budget is for the clerk's office is a fraction of the size of the one that I currently sit on a board and manage. So it doesn't bother me or scare me or intimidate me in any way, shape, or form to walk into an office and say that we're going to talk about a budget that is going to be in need of some probably significant going over and reviewing, given the financial situation that we're in, given the fact that revenues are going to be on a downward turn for quite some time. But again, I have experience in doing that and sitting on the school board, living through what we've lived through over the past 8 years. So,
thank you, Cindy. So we're coming right back to you with this next question. We've touched on several important policies, but before we wrap up, is there one priority you have that we didn't discuss, but that's going to be a focus area for you for both your campaign and for the position of clerk if you're elected?
So again, my focus would be on making sure that the transition of leadership in that office is smooth and easy. I don't want employees to feel like I'm going to come in there and make sweeping, massive changes. I think that there's a lot of work to be done with the employees that are already there. I know some of them, they're trusted. Pat has done a really good job of hiring the right people to be in the right seats on the bus. I think that the thing that's going to be important is, again, customer service and how we present the things that are needed by people in the community, whether that's other government agencies or the lay person who is looking for a birth certificate or marriage license, how we make things easier for them. And that is something that I think I spend a lot of my day doing already. You know, I will tell you 90% of the phone calls I get are approaching people and listening to them and pointing them in the direction of finding the person who can help them. And that to me is just customer service, making sure that people have the ability to get what they need in a timely fashion and without, and feeling comfortable about it and feeling that their records and their information is secure and that they're getting the attention that they need. So my focus would be on customer service, and then after that would be the budget and technology and making sure that we're doing everything we can for not just the customer who comes to us for those things, but continuing the relationships that we have with other government agencies. It's very important that we have those relationships. I have those relationships, and I know my opponent has said that he has. I work very closely with some of the people who we would continue to have to do work with, and people who have endorsed my campaign as well, including the fact that the current clerk has put her trust and her endorsement behind my name should say a lot to the voters in Hillsborough County. The current clerk, who has been in this office for a very long time and is well respected in this community, has chosen me to supersede her in this seat because she trusts me and she knows that I will run this office the way that it's intended to be run.
All right, and so Kevin, we're coming back to you with that question, and I'll go ahead and restate it. We've touched on several important policies, but before we wrap up, is there a policy or priority that we didn't discuss, but that will be a focus area for you both during the campaign and if elected as clerk?
Sure, Matt. First and foremost, of course, it's the continuity of operations. It's making sure, again, as I talked about the brain drain that potentially could happen within inside the organization. It's making sure that we have employee retention and that the tenured employees that are there, that we're able to retain them to maintain the current level of services that our customers have come to expect. Customer service, as I mentioned also before, is one of the key focuses within inside our organization. The taxpayers have known me as a county commissioner over the last 8 years, as CFO or the Comptroller of the county. They can expect, again, the same fiscal hawk that I have been as a county commissioner to make sure that their tax dollars are well managed and well invested and well used. And then followed by that, the priority that will actually form my legacy will be equal access to the justice system for all people.
Thank you, Kevin. And so this will be our last question. Where can voters go to learn more about your campaign, Kevin, and your position on issues most important to them?
they can visit www.kevinbeckner.com. Throughout that website, they can learn about my priorities as clerk. They can also see the numerous public elected officials, current and former, that have endorsed me, including the former CFO of the state of Florida, Alex Sink. But most importantly, they can also see the organizations that support me, that represent hardworking, working class families. And these are people that are on the front lines every single day, working inside Hillsborough County. And so that's who we're most proud of that's supporting my campaign. And they can also visit there to find out how they can get involved and further support me as their next clerk of Hillsborough County and CFO.
Thank you, Kevin. And Cindy, that last question for you. Where can voters go to learn more about your campaign and your positions on issues most important to them?
So my campaign website is www.votecindystewart.com. We're also on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. Actually, there's two campaign pages on Facebook. One is Cindy Stewart for Clerk, and then my regular page is Cindy Stewart. I post everything on both. So there's a lot of activity there. What I would say is that I have the endorsement of the sitting clerk. And I think that that is crucial in this race, to know that the sitting clerk trusts me to take the position once she retires. And I will follow in her footsteps to maintain and continue to do everything that she has done and then some to ensure that the public, that there will be transparency, accountability, and financial stability in that office. I don't see that there are things that we can't accomplish. There are many challenges that will come with the budget. I'm not afraid of those, and I think that those will continue to evolve over time as we move through the rest of this pandemic. Again, I have the endorsement of the sitting clerk, as well as two sitting county commissioners, the public defender, many other individuals, past and present, who were elected officials. So again, this campaign can't just be about endorsements. My main focus will be that the voters can depend on me. They voted me into office twice as an elected school board member in the 7th largest district in the nation, managing a $3 billion budget. And I think that that says something for my integrity and my ability to manage difficult tasks. We've hired, like I said, 3 superintendents, as well as many other employees that have had to come and go out of that office, mostly being our superintendent. And again, crucial hire for us to make. A lot of time consumption gone into making sure that we put the right person in place. I don't skimp on details. That is something that I spend a lot of time finding out all the details that need to be brought forward before I make a decision. So again, my attention to detail is impeccable. I spend a lot of time with my staff and with the people who are working with us around contracts, making sure that there are no loopholes, there are no places for people to enter into things that the district doesn't need. So again, my endorsement from the sitting clerk is crucial for me. And I think that there's a reason that she put her name next to mine to make sure that I am your next clerk of court.
Thank you both. And it's been a pleasure spending some time with both of you today. Thank you for giving us that time. I'd just like to close by saying, on behalf of the Tampa Bay Chambers Policy Council, the Chamber's 1,400 members, our board of directors, we really want to thank both of you for joining us. And we thank you for your willingness to serve in elected office in the past and to continue to strive to serve in elected office in the future. We're grateful for that. And this concludes our candidate interview today. Again, thank you.